Hello, welcome to part 2 of my Lori Vallow Daybell experience that I had when I witnessed the courtroom drama, let's just say. Okay, so I already told, if you didn't see my first video, go ahead and click on the video right up here and that will get you to the first one so you can get a preface to what I'm going to be talking about. So I won't reiterate what I did yesterday, what I told about yesterday, but there were still quite a few questions that people are asking, and I hadn't finished my story. I literally was telling it, and then I looked at the clock and thought, this is going too long. I don't know if anybody's interested, but apparently people are interested. So I'm going to go ahead and give the second half of my story. Okay, so I'm going to tell it chronologically the way you got the whole backstory yesterday. Now I want to tell about the courtroom and what I witnessed. So again, yesterday, or it was now it's 2 days ago, the drama was the case was very deep and dark because it was talking about the remains of JJ and Tylee and the state they were in. And yeah, it was very hard. So the morning, they were talking all about it. So basically when you go to court, it starts at 8:30. Then there's usually a break between 10 and 10:30. And you have 20-30 minutes there for a break. You go back and you have the court's in session until lunch break, which is between 12 and 12:30, just depending on how the trial is going. Get an hour lunch break, come back. There's another segment, another break, and another segment. So there's 4 different segments. And so after the first segment, I'm just calling it that. That's my own terminology. I'm sure there's a fancy way to say it. But anyway, during the morning segment, they announced that they were going to be doing these pictures after lunch. So quite a few people did not come back in because we were already hearing, and I think it was just too much. It was just too much to take. And Kay and Larry were not there for the morning session. I'm sure that the prosecutors let them know in advance. This is going to be the yucky stuff. Like, everything's yucky, but this is like pictures and everything. So anyway, during the second session, the defense objected to the pictures being public. So they had a whole sidebar. They went back in the, I don't know, I guess there's a hallway, maybe judges' chambers. That's the way I visualize it in my mind. But anyway, they went back and they were gone for a long time. And the defense had said that, because they're so inflammatory that it would sway the jury too much. And so they actually asked that, first of all, that they not be shown at all. Secondly, that if they are shown, that they go in black and white. And anyway, they were in judges' chambers for a long time. Obviously something was going on. Came back out, and the judge determined that he was going to show the photos, but not to the gallery. Only the attorneys, Lori herself, and the juror and the judge, and I guess the bailiffs can see it, but none of the people, the visitors, so to speak, even the family, would not be seeing them. So they had to reconstruct the whole room so that us as the viewers couldn't see. Now, realizing that the jurors have monitors right in front of them, so they can see whatever's on the big screen right in front of them. And then the attorneys have screens, and the judge has a screen, and then there's a big screen that we all see from. Well, so when they determine that, they're just going to leave the screen that we all see off. So they're getting ready to start, and then they determined that, there's still people in the gallery that can see the pictures, because if you're sitting right behind the attorney, you can see the attorney's screen. So you're still going to see the pictures. So they stopped everything again, and they had all of the attorneys. Now remember, there's an L shape, so where Lori is sitting and her attorneys are up here, so you're not going to be able to see her screen if you're sitting over here, but you can see the prosecuting attorney's screens. So what they did was they turned all the computers around, and they had the prosecuting attorneys come over to the other side of the table, and then they had all the jurors' monitors. So I'm sitting right here, the jurors are this way. They just had them turn it that way so that we can't see. None of us can see the pictures. And quite frankly, I'm glad that happened, because I don't think I could have handled those pictures. Just hearing it was very traumatic for me. So anyway, as they're setting all that up, the attorneys go around to the other side, and for me, that ends up making it so the majority of the day, I have 100% clear shot eye contact. Well, I'm going to tell about that in a minute. Pure view to Lori, because where I was sitting, every once in a while, depending on how the attorneys were sitting, she would get behind, like, let's pretend the left, like, she would get, if they moved, I wouldn't be able to see her face. So then I would have to adjust over. And so there were times when you couldn't see her face. And I think that on any given day in the courtroom, no one is seeing Lori's face 100% of the time. That's just the visitors. So obviously the jury, they can see it all the time, and the attorneys, but not the visitors. So it just depends on where you're sitting and how she's leaning and how people are leaning. But because they did that, it was 100% direct view. So I got to see her face through the entire most inflammatory testimonies of the whole trial, I believe, in my opinion. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I want to talk about what I saw from Lori, and I want to talk about what I saw from the jurors, and I'm going to talk about what I saw from the witness, or all the family and people who were in the courtroom. That is what I spent my day doing, observing. Now, having said that, I want to give a little background that I am a professional when it comes to body language. I'm completely joking about that. I am not a professional at body language, but I do find it interesting. I've always found body language interesting, and I have been watching like crazy a YouTube group that's called the Behavior Panelists. Now, I'm not sure if you have seen them before, but they have been on Dr. Phil. They've been on, they're amazing, and it's four men that explain body language. They're body language experts. So, because of my schooling, watching the behavior panel on YouTube, I feel that I have a little bit of knowledge. Now, again, I'm just your average person off the street that tried to study some body language. So, the main things, there's some things, and I'm gonna put a link. I don't even know if I can put a link, but if you can't find it, try to look for the behavior panel, and specifically they did two different segments on Lori Vallow and her when she was talking to the investigator after Charles was shot. And so there's some things that I was really, some things you can't find from body language unless you're hearing them talk. So this was just like basically watching. So the things that I'm going to be watching for, and I'm not going to try to explain what they are, go watch the behavior panelists and they will explain what it is. But adapters and illustrators, I'm going to be watching for that. We know she's been, according to the behavior panelists, they believe she's a narcissist, and so do I. Even maybe psychopath, but anyway, that's a whole nother story. Request for approval. This is something that they talk about all the time, and I was wanting to watch and see if she's doing that. Request for approval. Like, you think about it, like even a dog. If a dog is like trying to get you to give them a cookie or whatever, they get that look on their face, like, come on, please, you know, request for approval. So I'm watching for that. Eye blocking, barriers. Does she put up any barriers? And oh, do I have a story to tell about that? Chin boss. Again, you have to watch the behavior. I can't explain it, but I knew what to watch for. Micro expressions. Oh boy, did I see some micro expressions, because you're supposed to try to stay expressionless. I saw micro expressions on the judge, on the jury, and on Lori, and I'm going to tell you what from my perspective I saw. Then what's their baseline? And then when things get sticky, do the facials change? I'm going to talk about that. And then my favorite one of all that I learned from the behavior panel is called Duper's Delight. And that's when somebody who's a sociopath or a narcissist even, they cannot help themselves. They have to smile when they think they're getting away with something, or when a memory comes back of something horrible and they have to act like it's awful, but they can't help themselves. They smile because they're so happy with themselves. So that's what I'm going to talk about. All right. Again, this is a for what it's worth category. So when they start talking about JJ, literally, we were all coming back from that break. We knew the pictures were going to be up. There was a lot of time of them setting up the room for you to be thinking about what is coming next. And literally, from what I saw, Lori was over there just like it was. I tried to explain it like she's happy, she's chatty, or whatever. And then it's like, okay, I'm sure her attorneys had to have said, stop looking so happy. I'm sure they had to have, like, put on a sad face. Fake it. It felt to me like she was faking. That's all I can say. And so get this monotone look on your face and do this. And then she's always writing. Always writing. I don't know what she's writing. She might be scribbling circles for all I know. She's always writing so that she's not having to, like, directly look. She did not have her hair. A lot of times she puts her hair in a rubber band right here and it kind of hangs down. She did not have anything in her hair, so she could put her hair down over her face. Now, remember, she's facing directly at the jurors. And so what she did was she would turn her body, put her hair down so that they couldn't 100% see her face. And she had glasses on. And I remember thinking to myself, she's going to have to shed some tears because that's a requirement. I'm sure that was 100% a requirement. Like, you come up, do whatever it takes, pull an eyelash out of your eye, shed some tears. And so she knew she had to shed some tears. But I was thinking to myself, again, things I learned from the behavior panelists, if they're true, full-on tears, two things happen. Number one, your glasses are going to fog up because of all the moisture. If it's just like a little tiny tear, they're not going to fog up. So I was watching for foggy glasses. And then secondly, your nose will turn bright red because you just start getting snotty, whatever. And one of the examples of this is the behavior panelists, my favorite place. They did a thing on Alex Murdaugh when he was talking about his wife's murder in the car right after it happened. And he has tissue, but they're like, notice, he used one tissue in 20 minutes. Like, if you're really, like, upset and things start pouring out and you're gonna need a lot more than one tissue. And he just kept on using that same dry tissue to act like he's wiping. So I was watching, how many tissues will she use? And so on. So this is what I'm gonna tell you. I was keeping close, really close. And I was noticing, I was looking around the gallery. I'm going to call it gallery. What do you want me to call it? I was looking around the gallery and I noticed that a lot of the reporters, well, all of the reporters, they're typing 100 miles an hour and they're glancing up and they're typing and they're glancing over. So they're trying to take it all in. But it's so much to take in. There's no way you can catch it all. So you're either doing this or and luckily, I didn't have to do any of this. I was lock on. Eyes. Like, I was locked in. And I will say this, before I explain it, there was a couple of times that I saw her look directly at me, and I was scared. I was scared because of everything. But for the most part, she tried to look down. Okay, so here's what happens. They start on the JJ stuff, and it was devastating, and it went long. There were so many different images, and they were describing them, and she has the screen right over here, so she kept her hair down so she wasn't looking at the screen, but every once in a while she couldn't help herself. She had to look. And I find that really interesting, that she had to glance over and then she'd have to act like she's sad. She did cry. There were some tears. She had her tissue and she was dab. I kept watching those glasses and I was seeing no fog. Eventually, she'd kind of like dab her nose with her tissue, dab her eyes and hair down so you can't see. And the jurors were trying so hard to keep an eye on her and to watch her. Okay. So let me talk about the juror. I'm trying to do the best I can to explain this. From my understanding, and as long as those jurors are being honest, they really did not know what was coming. They haven't been watching all the news, and they don't know all the stuff, and they did not, I don't think, really anticipate what the gruesomeness of it, perhaps. I don't know. But I watched them, and boy, did I see micro expressions. Like one man, and there's a lot of different ages. There's a couple of girls that look really young. There's a couple that are quite old. I mean, like my age, even older maybe. One of them particularly is quite a bit older. You got the sheriff, and then but anyway, so this one man in particular, I noticed him, and he was just like he was trying not to shake his head, but he couldn't help himself. He was just like, no, like just look angry as throughout. Like he would just be like, no, just disgust. And I certainly saw that. I think other than maybe two people, I saw disgust on the jurors' faces. How can you not? And I even saw disgust on the judge's face. And he's got a beard, and he's so good at staying stone-faced. But there's a thing called, I can't remember it, from behavior panel, where they'll like tongue jut, like when it's just like they have a distaste in their mouth. And I saw that, and from the jurors, different times throughout the day, they were disgusted. There were a couple of times I saw jurors crying. There was one lady, and I was looking at her, and I was thinking she was really stone-faced, like not moving at all, locked in, not anything. And then I saw her, like, she had a tissue, and she kind of wiped her cheek like this. And I was like, oh, maybe her cheek itches. And then I saw her wiping her, then I finally could see tears were just pouring down her face. She was trying to stay stoic. She was doing the best she could, but how can you not? And she was just dabbing those tears. And I saw a few. There was one guy, he was like a nail biter. Like I could tell, even if he's bored, he's biting his nails. If he's stressed, he's biting his nails. He was a nail biter. And his poor hands had to have been attacked that day, because he was just like gnawing away. It was deplorable. And they were taking it in. Here is the one thing that worries me, because I've followed this and I know all the things that the public can know, and more than what those jurors know. She is slick. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. And even though I want to just hate her for what I believe she did, she has a way of making you want to like her. And I don't know how, because I just was like, there's no way I'm going to have that. She will not have that effect on me. I recognize that she has done that to so many people over her life, but she will not have that effect on me, because I'm not going to fall for it. Well, I found myself falling for it. Like, I would feel compassion for her. It was the weirdest thing. Even though I'm seeing these micro expressions, the duper's delight, she can't help herself, especially when we get to the Tylee. Oh man, that's a whole nother story. Let me stay with JJ. So she did shed some tears. When it came down to it, she ended up, and the tissues were clear across the table from her. So it was a huge gesture to grab another tissue. She used two tissues the entire day. 2. She only used tissues on JJ, nothing for Tylee. And then after it got too much and it was going on and on, she quit drying, and she put her hand on her head like this, and her elbows on the table, and she literally just rested her head and just was looking down, so that jurors could not see her face at all, because I think she was tired of trying to act it out. She just was like, and I'm sure then it can look to them like she doesn't want to see the screen of what they're seeing. But I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. Some of them might be falling for it. I sort of started to fall for it, and then I would remember what she's done and how she's done it, and how I would just visualize her on the beach, like la 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 la, getting married, or when the interview when after Charles died, and she's just smiling and she cannot contain herself. She's so happy. She's like, neighbors, sorry. This is so great. She'd been planning it for so long. My fear is that because she did such a good job of making sure that it's always somebody else's fingerprints on the murder weapon, so to speak, that some jurors might fall for it and go, it wasn't her fault. You can't blame her. You have to blame that bad guy Chad and that bad brother Alex, and it's just not her fault. Oh, I'll be sick if that's what happens. But I can see how some people might fall for that. I can see. Because if you didn't watch the behavior panelists and know about those micro expressions, and here's what happens. This is what I figured out. In your stomach, you don't want it to be true. You don't want to believe a mother could do that. So you're just looking for any reason. This is me anyway. You're looking for any reason for that to not be true so that it won't be as bad. And so you want to just believe her. You want to fall for it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that my opinion is that everyone will be able to see through it. Anyway, okay, so let's move on to Tylee. By the time they get to Tylee, she couldn't even pretend anymore. It had been hours for JJ, and she didn't have it in her anymore. So she didn't have those tissues. She didn't try to, she just kept her face down, and she acted mad. That's what in between mad, the only thing that I could describe was she looked like she was looking at people as if she was a librarian and she caught you whispering, like, stop it, don't believe it, that was unbelievable to me. Like, come on. You're not a grieving mother. I had my son got on the wrong bus and he was lost, and it was a freezing cold day, and it was an hour and a half of us trying to find him. That's a whole story. He was 5. And I just knew he was dead somewhere, and I was hysterical. They did an Amber Alert. The whole town was looking, and we finally found him. He was trying to walk his way home. Luckily, it was so cold, but because he was walking so hard, he had not frozen, and we found him. And anyway, I got him. I was driving with undercover cops while we're trying to find him. We're racing all over town. Where could he be? Get him in the car. And I'm going home, and I went to adjust my mirror, and I look up in my mirror, and I was like, oh my word, my face. I had mascara down my face. I had snot across my face. Like, I was a mess. And I didn't even think about it, because all I could think about was my missing son. I can't for the life of me think of listening to that kind of testimony and seeing those pictures, even if you believe, let's say you believe this theory that he's a zombie and whatever, it's still impossible for me to believe that you could be happy about that you saved the day, you got a zombie off the earth. Who is your son? I just, no, I don't believe it. So, okay. 2 more things and I'll wrap it up. I'm not going longer than a half an hour. Tylee's testimony, the testimony about her remains was awful too. And by then, she had nothing but mad. She must have been mad at her. That's the only thing I could think. Based on my own theory, she must have been mad at her. And my guess is Tylee was going to start talking because she knew. She knew more than anybody what was going on, so she had to go. And when so there she was, being stoic, her hand on her head, drawing, no expressions, just a little anger that keeps peeking through. But then as soon as the jurors walked out, again, I am locked in on her, and there's nobody in my way. She stood up, she folded her arms, and she was just like she was mad at those prosecutors, and she let them all know by her look. I'm like, I watched her change the second the jurors were gone. She didn't have to put on that show anymore. And it was crazy. I mean, crazy. I was scared. That's when I was like, okay, I'm scared. So here's my theory. I got 3 minutes. I'm not going over half an hour. Here's my theory. I think that Chad, his crazy whatevers, Lori, her crazy whatevers, they both fed off each other. And here's what I think. Did they believe? That's the question that keeps on going through my mind. Did they really believe in this religious reason for doing all this stuff and whatever? So, way back in the day, I remember going to an assembly at school when I was in high school. And it was a hypnotist. And I'd seen it over the years, and it was funny, and people do funny things on stage. I think I saw a hypnotist at the fair, and it was so funny, and I wanted to be one of those that goes on stage and get hypnotized. I thought that sounded fun. So I was like, yeah, me, and I got picked. Oh, yay, me, I got picked. So I go up on stage, and they're going along, getting you all to go to sleep, and I was like, I'm not feeling it. I got nothing. So what did I do? Faked it. I faked like I was hypnotized. So I'm like, oh, I'm asleep. Oh, now I'm stuck to my chair. Oh, now I think I'm flying. Whatever. I faked the whole thing. Acting job. Yeah, I should have got an Academy Award. I was so good. And then years later, I start talking to other people who were also on that stage. I'm like, were you really hypnotized? Psh, none of us were hypnotized. We were faking. It was fun. We were faking. I think that's what happens. Lori hears all this stuff about Chad, so she's gonna fake like she has the same thing. Chad had heard all this stuff from somebody else who wrote a book, so now he's faking that he's getting these revelations. And then as they get all their minions, each one of them have to join in and fake too. Oh, I saw a vision. Oh, I know that. Like, it's a whole great big joke. And I think every single one of them believe that they pulled the wool over everybody else's eyes. They don't know if the other person's telling the truth. I don't know if they know if they're telling the truth, but they know they're faking and they're going to take it to their grave. There's my opinion. So there you go. Okay, I had one last thing. I got to remember what it was. Oh yeah, my final thing. So when the whole court is over, the day is over, I had planned on trying to meet a couple more people, talk about the case, because I've just been so interested in it. I wanted my opinion out there with the other people in the courtroom, but I was sick. I was just like, I gotta get out of here. I want to go home. This was awful. It wasn't I thought it would be so fun to just take my behavior panel information and no, it was sickening. So I get in my car. I'm leaving the garage, the parking garage, and I'm coming up to go out where you pay, and there was some sort of a van thing that was right there too, and they had the right of way to turn first and then me turn. So I was looking at the van do I have the right of way or do you have the right of way? I was just trying to figure it out. So I was just kind of looking at the driver to see what would happen. And I see the driver, and right behind the driver is Lori. She was being transported away from the jail. And I had no idea. She's looking right at me with those glasses. And she's just like in the chair right behind the driver in the seat. And she's looking right at me. And I was like, oh no, this is like the third time she's looked straight at me. And I was so scared. Like I thought, oh, she's going to find me and she knows what car I drive. Like, it's ridiculous, I know, but she scares me. So then they pulled away, I pulled away, and I went home. So there's my story. And so if you want any more commentary, let me know. That's all I've got for today.